Hey, third graders, it's Mrs. Seals back for our next science lab. So, for the past couple weeks, we started talking about our solar system. We talked about the sun. We talked about the relationship between the sun, earth, and moon. Last week, we started talking about the planets by talking about the four inner planets, which are the four planets that are closest to the sun. We also said that in addition to being the closest to the sun, they also have a couple other things in common. They're also have rocky surfaces, or what we call terrestrial surfaces, which means they are solid. We could stand on them and walk on them if we could get to the other inner planets. And in addition to that, they are also the four smallest planets in our solar system. So today we are going to talk about the outer planets, which are the four planets that are the furthest away from the sun. It's important to note that the inner planets and outer planets are separated by what we call an asteroid belt, which is basically a kind of line of asteroids that are floating around and moving through. That's what separates Mars from Jupiter. Jupiter is the first of the outer planets. So let's go ahead and get started with the outer planets. Your target says I can identify the planets in order. I can identify the planets in Earth's solar system and their position in relation to the sun. So, like I told you, the outer planets are the four planets that are the furthest from the sun. They are Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. Those are our four outer planets. Parents or people that are my age watching this, you may remember when we were in school, there were 9 planets. There was another planet past Neptune called Pluto. Since we have been in school, scientists have downgraded Pluto to what we call a dwarf planet for a couple of reasons. Number one, it is much, much, much smaller than any of the other planets in our solar system, even smaller than the inner planets. It is much further away. It's very far past Neptune. And it actually, the orbit that it makes around the sun is actually shaped a little bit differently than the other orbits. So for those reasons, scientists have decided that Pluto is no longer considered one of the planets in our solar system. There are only 8 now, and Pluto is what we call a dwarf planet. So today we're just going to be talking about Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. All right. So in addition to being the furthest away from the sun, the outer planets have a couple more things in common. Number one is that they are all called gas giants. This means they are made of gas, unlike the inner planets, which are made of rock. So even if we could get to these outer planets, which would take a very long time because they are so far away, we would not be able to stand on them the way that we can stand on Earth or the way that we could stand on the other inner planets because they do not have solid surfaces like the inner planets. They have gas, they're made of gases. Okay. Also, the outer planets are the 4 largest planets in our solar system. They are all bigger than the 4 inner planets. So let's start out with talking about Jupiter. Jupiter is my favorite planet. So Jupiter is the 5th planet from the sun. So we have Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, then Jupiter. Remember, Mars and Jupiter are separated by the asteroid belt. Jupiter is the largest planet in our solar system. Jupiter has a giant storm that has been swirling on it for nearly 400 years and is called the Great Red Spot. You can see it in this picture right here. This big red spot is actually a giant storm that is even bigger than the planet Earth. So that tells you how big Jupiter is compared to Earth, because this storm is about 1 1/3 the size of Earth. So if you took the planet Earth and cut it into 3 equal pieces, This storm would be the size of one whole Earth and then one of the three pieces of another Earth. So it's very, very big. It's bigger than the planet Earth. That tells you how big this planet is. All right, and that's all for Jupiter. So the most important things to know about Jupiter: fifth planet from the sun, largest planet in our solar system, has a giant storm that has been swirling on it for 400 years called the Great Red Spot. Next, we have Saturn, which is my second favorite planet. And there's Saturn. Saturn is beautiful. Saturn is easy to identify because it has these large rings. Saturn is the sixth planet from the sun. It has 7 large rings. And back in 1610, a scientist named Galileo found Saturn through a telescope, but he thought he was seeing 3 separate planets. So 1610, that's a very long time ago. That's over 400 years ago. 411 years ago, to be exact. And so think about that. Technology wasn't great. They didn't have, spaceships and satellites and radars and things that go into outer space. They didn't have computers. They didn't have anything like that. So his telescope was all he had. And it wasn't a great telescope. It wasn't like telescopes we had now. It was kind of blurry. It was kind of hard to tell what he was looking at. So he thought that this over here was a separate planet. This was a planet. This was a planet. The way he was looking at it through the telescope made him think it was 3 separate planets. Scientists later on discovered that it is actually one large planet with 7 giant rings. All right, so that's Saturn. Next we have Uranus, which is a beautiful light blue color. It also has rings, but its rings are much thinner. When you see a picture of a planet with rings, it's likely Saturn. Uranus's rings are much thinner, and they also, if you'll notice, go the opposite direction. So Uranus is the 7th planet from the sun. Its axis is tilted on its side. So what that means is, the Earth and the other planets, their axis is up and down, maybe not directly up and down, but tilted. But look at Uranus, it's this way. So that means it rotates, instead of rotating this way, like Earth and the other planets do, it rotates this way. And it rotates backwards compared to Earth. So all the other planets, Earth and the other planets, rotate counterclockwise, and Uranus rotates clockwise. So it's a different, very different planet. And then our last planet, our furthest planet from the sun, is Neptune, which is also this really pretty dark blue color. It's the 8th planet from the sun. It's the smallest of the 4 gas giants. So out of Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, it's the smallest, but it's still bigger than the 4 inner rocky planets. And it is the windiest planet. It has very, very, very strong winds, stronger than any winds we have here on Earth. All right, so this is similar to what we did last week. The students in class will have this paper, outer planets sort, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, with these empty spots. They will have this paper that has different clues or information or pictures. They're going to cut them and glue them. We can quickly do this together, see what you remember. Let's see. The smallest gas planet. Which one of those, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, or Neptune, did I say was the smallest of the gas planets? Hopefully you remember that one was Neptune. Neptune is the smallest gas planet. The 6th planet from the sun, that would be Saturn. Jupiter is 5, Saturn is 6. The windiest planet, I told you, is Neptune. Neptune has stronger winds than any winds we have here on Earth. The 5th planet from the sun is Jupiter. The seventh planet from the sun is Uranus. The eighth planet from the sun, also the last planet, is Neptune. Our largest planet. Do you remember what our largest planet is in our solar system? It is Jupiter, my favorite planet. This stormy planet is home to the Great Red Spot. You remember which planet has that? Also Jupiter, good. This planet's axis is tilted on its side. Rotates this way. That was Uranus, very good. This planet rotates backwards compared to Earth. Also Uranus. This planet has 7 large, beautiful rings, Saturn. And when Galileo found this planet in 1610, he thought he was seeing 3 separate planets. That's also Saturn because of the thick rings. All right, so I hope that you had fun learning about the outer planets. Please remember there's a little short quiz on Schoology to see what you learned, not for a grade, not required. But I would love to see what you learned about the outer planets. I will see you guys next week. Bye-bye.